they get the same amount of prize money. It's like, that doesn't feel quite all right to me. So actually I love this setup.
Yeah, always good to have those incentives, and every single game and match does matter. Of course, neither player wants to go out this early. Up here in the top left-hand side, hailing from the Philippines, he has been the best player in his country since day one of StarCraft 2. Representing Liab Esports, he is EnDerr.
And the newly crowned king of North America after securing his first title just the other week, representing Team Alpha X, it is Astrea.
Going to be a nice early probe going across the map there for Astrea. Not really looking to block the expansion, but once he sees no hatchery and sees that was a gas pool, definitely can go back down there and block it. So EnDerr wanting to go for the quick Zergling speed. Now, this is a map with, of course, no ramp on your natural, bit of a wide wall off, which means that you're a bit vulnerable to like any of those classic Ravager Ling busts. I'm not saying that's necessarily what EnDerr would go for, but it's one of those many things that Astrea needs to check for in the follow-up to this sort of quick gas opening from EnDerr.
Yep, if I was Astrea and I scout this, I'd be like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna get all in. I just don't know which all in it is going to be yet, but it could be a Zergling Flood, it could be a Baneling Bust, it could be a Roachling all in. Now, obviously, you don't want to overreact by like never expanding and then building a whole bunch of batteries, because if they then just build drones, you obviously start falling pretty far behind. But this is a very scary thing to scout as a Protoss. When they have such quick access to their gas, you know you're gonna have to keep a close eye on everything that's heading your way. But the moment you lose this pro pick, it kind of becomes a guessing game. And I think this is the main reason why Astrea also went Cybercore before Nexus. And I would truly recommend an early shield battery in this scenario.
Yeah, always a good idea to have a bit of insurance there. And that Adept, of course, did get chrono boosted. And it looks like he does want to wall it off, but he doesn't quite have the money for the gateway and the pylon. So he does end up canceling that one. And Adept pursuing the Zergling up into the main base. Now, there are 2 workers on gas in the main for EnDerr. Gives him a little bit of flexibility in the follow-up, but nothing but drones so far. And Robo in the wall-in for Astrea. So definitely going to give him, similar to that submarine build from Trap, a bit of a safer follow-up opening. Can always get an Immortal out fast if needed. And Warp Prism gives you some very flexible counter pressure.
Yeah, I think we only caught a little bit of it, but Astrea actually misplaced his Robo, so he had to cancel it and rebuild it. These are little things that do really start adding up, and we can see him sacrificing another probe right now in the natural because he's obviously respecting what he scouted. This has to be a pretty uncomfortable start for Astrea. First, he messes up with the battery, then he misplaces the Robo, you send in the second probe, and what did he really see with that second probe? He didn't even see the third hatchery, so he's got to be very worried about some things that could be heading his way right now. We know that nothing too crazy is happening. It's just a couple of Zerglings, but if you're a Protoss in this scenario, you're feeling pretty uncomfortable, Pick.
Yeah, he's scouting for those North American builds right now. He's got a probe patrolling the edge of his main, watching for a Nidus. There is a build where you actually just go straight into Nidus off like 15 workers off this opening. Use tons of Lings and a couple queens pop out. So Astrea definitely being exceptionally careful and even going Immortal before Warp Prism. Meanwhile, EnDerr just droning on up. Is getting a Roach Warren, second Gas Geyser. Third base is about to finish. It's a real shame for Astrea that he kind of went out with that probe and it went right past the third without seeing it. Otherwise, he would have probably gone Prism first, already had 2 Adepts doing a bit of harassment, would have given him a much smoother position.
Yep. At least he sent that probe that was on patrol back into one of the mineral lines, as he now has 2 pylons spotting for a potential Nidus. This is just a bit weird, man. Like, I understand what Astrea is doing, but once again, I'm a bit confused about what EnDerr is doing in this game. He's really hurting his own economy quite a bit by going for that early gas, the early pull, and then the later expand. Then he makes quite a few Zerglings. Now it almost feels like he's getting ready to deal with Resonating Glaive at depths, as he's getting a safety Spine Crawler up as well in between all the bases. It's a little bit of everything, Pig, but these are not the builds we normally see.
No, not at all. These Adepts do come in. Nice pickoffs here for Astrea. 3 workers, 4 workers. Ooh, nice damage there to Astrea. To EnDerr from Astrea. And I was thinking with all those Overlords popping out, EnDerr was going to hold down the Roach Key. But he rebuilds drones after. He makes 5 Ravages right now. This is a really interesting, because I feel like he's going all in as EnDerr, but he keeps holding down that drone piece. He's kind of swapping between the two focuses here. I think he's struggling to get a read on what Astrea is going for. He thinks Astrea is going to go for a huge push, and Ravager Ling is amazing for defending that, but definitely doesn't have the economic lead off the third base that he might hope for. And as his Ravagers go to the front, they get trapped by force fields.
Careful, EnDerr, careful. One Ravager takes a lot of damage and will fall. The second one gets force fielded in as well. At least grabbed one sentry at the tail end of that exchange. But yeah, I mean, if EnDerr makes nothing but units at this point, I do believe that he should be fine against the push that is heading his way. But it does really suck that he just lost 2 of those expensive Ravagers.
Indeed, 7 gateways are up right now for Astrea. No real zealots or anything, just 2 adepts as the anti-Zergling units. Oh my lord! Oh, a lot of Zerglings got trapped. That is painful.
Yep, those links would have been so awesome to actually set up a flank and get on top of the Immortals, activate the barriers while you're defending the front with Roaches and Ravagers. It seems like that is still going to be EnDerr's plan, despite the fact that he just lost a whole bunch. I mean, he does have a lot of units out, and if the Corrosive Bows can connect with his brother's army, it's actually possible that EnDerr holds it. Those bows landed in the middle of the sentries. He did lose quite a few Zerglings there. He needs to keep this hatchery alive, obviously, Pick, but I actually think it's doable. He's going for maybe the Prism. No, he doesn't get the Prism.
Oh, the Zealots, though, smash those Zerglings on the front line. Zergling flank comes from behind. Does it do enough? I don't think so. There's still so many Stalkers, and those 3 Immortals have just racked up too much damage at this point. EnDerr is running out of steam. This is such a powerful push from Astrea. Just a big 7-gate push. 3 Immortals just will not go down, and their damage output is far too steady. EnDerr's last Ravage is getting cornered.
Yeah, a couple of sentries are going to fall here, but that's obviously not going to make the difference here, as these Immortals simply still have way too much HP. It's such a shame, because I really think that EnDerr could have possibly defended this push if he didn't lose the Ravagers on the other side of the map, and then didn't run those 20 Zerglings into the force fields and the Immortal Zealot meat grinder. Just kind of waiting for those links to show up. The last few Ravagers will fall, and Astrea takes the 1-0 lead.
X, the Protoss player, the king of North America, it is Astrea. Newly crowned as that NA champion.
Well, as a Dutchman, I do like a variety of cheeses, Pick. In the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of the man hailing from the Philippines. It is EnDerr.
Yeah, indeed. I've seen how much mayonnaise you eat with your French fries, Brody, and I can tell your people have been developing a lactose tolerance for a very long time, many generations.
Don't expose me like that on the broadcast. It's a healthy amount of mayo, okay?
A few French fries with your gigantic bowl of mayonnaise. Yes.
All right, EnDerr is once again, guys, going for the pull and then the gas. I mean, normally people do this when they want to all in early on. They want to Zergling flood you, they want to Baneling boss you, they want to Nidus, something among these lines. Like, I don't mind doing this as like just a macro opener once in a series to kind of freak your opponents out, or then set yourself up for the all-in later on, right? Like, he has macroed from this a couple times, then maybe eventually just flip the switch and it's like, this time it's not macro, this time we're Zergling flooding. If he's just gonna once again play macro from this, I'm a bit disappointed, because StarCraft 2 is a hard game, and he's making it even harder on himself by putting himself economically behind in each and every single of the games he has played so far today.
Yeah, EnDerr definitely a player I think is more comfortable when he's got control of the game. So this does allow you to have that super early link speed. Puts your opponent in the dark a little bit more. Now, Astrea doesn't want to be in the dark, so he hides a probe in the corner of EnDerr's main base. And that's going to come in a little bit, and it's going to try and scout. But EnDerr, he finds it. Dude, there's a reason. You know, in our region, there's always Banelings in the corner of your base in Zerg vs. Zerg. There's always a pylon. You know, you check those corners, man. Always check those corners.
But that's still a nice tiny scout for Astrea, right? Because if there was a Roach Warren, then you obviously would have seen it by now. You were able to click on the extractor there as well, so you could see that EnDerr indeed pulled off 2 of the drones from that extractor. So now Astrea can just kind of play a normal game. You have to worry a little bit about a Zergling flood, but if that's the only thing you have to worry about, your life already becomes a bit easier than also having to worry about Banelings or Ravages or Roaches or perhaps even a Nidus.
A little bit of theory craft while this game starts up. Robo, of course, for Astrea. I was wondering if you don't get Ling speed and you just, as long as that probe's not in there, because the Adept often stays at home, especially in this sort of game, you see Astrea's kind of afraid of the crazy attacks, and you go a really quick lair. I think there are, well, Nidus Worm for one, but also things like even maybe like a 2-base Muter opening or something like that might open itself up. Something like way out of the meta, you know, that Astrea just never deals with. But I gotta say, hats off to Astrea. He's not taking risks with his units, but he keeps just sneaking probes out across. He sees the third base. He's really double checking everything.
Yeah, but it makes sense. This is obviously a very big game. It's a big tournament. And if you scout these openings, like this is something I criticized Zest for a bit during the introductory Masters Katowice final. In a couple of the games, Rogue was opening up like this. Early gases, early pulls, later expands. And Zest just never doubled up. He just did his greedy builds the same way as he always did. And then a lot of fans on the internet were like, wow, Rogue really figured Zest out. I'm like, no, he's just not respecting what he scouted, right? Like, it's kind of insane to scout a very potential aggressive opener from a Zerg and then make 0 adjustments. We can see that Astrea does make a couple of adjustments, and that's okay. You can justify those little investments that you sacrifice because you already know that whatever the Zerg did to their economy is worse than the little sacrifice you make to go for the follow-up scout.
Oh, EnDerr's not prepared for this drop right now. This Prism coming into the back of the natural once again. He's going to take a fair bit of damage there, and that's unfortunate. Already 2 drones going down, a third, a fourth. Zerglings way out of position in this game. They're on the other side of the map, and this is massive, devastating damage.
Yep. I think it's big Gabriel amount of damage. That's how big this truly is. 10 drones going down when you already didn't have the most economic opening. EnDerr is now going to be forced to replace all the drones he lost, which obviously means his stack is going to be even later. He's going to start up +1 missile attacks right now, even before starting a lair. That's kind of interesting. You don't see that super often either. Oh, Pig, I want to see something that I can believe in, some potential here, but I just feel that EnDerr is in such a problematic position already. It's hard to emphasize how bad this really is, but it's a disaster, as you would say.
Yeah, a bit of a disaster, mate. Honestly, I think he can still make it from here. It's all about, I like the Queens now are zoning back. So thing is that there's not a lot of scouting for Astrea at this moment. He could start hallucinating soon, but Astrea's moving out for a third. Now, I think EnDerr here, it's all about the Ravagerling finding a time in here before too many Zealots warp in. So he's kind of got to go for this big +1 range, Roach Ravager Zergling push. Obviously, he's stuck on Hatch Tech. He's going to be all in. I think from here, it's turn every Roach into a Ravager, make basically non-stop Zerglings, and go, pedal to the metal. You've got to go and get on top of Astrea. Now, Astrea's kind of just saying, well, you know what? You don't actually have that much drones. I've kind of slowed you down. Let's not even take a third. Pulls back to his natural wall in. Astrea just giving great respect to EnDerr and not giving him the opportunity to ever catch him off guard. The Observer sees the Ravagers and Lings spilling through the middle of the map. Astrea is going to continue the Immortal drop while just sitting behind his natural wall, and that's something you do not break. Templar Archives comes down. Archon Zealot's going to be building. This is such good play from Astrea.
Yep, I actually wouldn't mind if he would have recalled the Prism there, but Astrea is very confident. He's like, nope, I don't need it. I can defend on 2 bases the way that I'm currently set up perfectly fine. I still think his life would be a bit easier with the Prism at home, and it seems like he agrees in the end. He is going to recall it, and Astrea, he is displaying great game sense at this point. He knows how committed this attack is. Drops a couple of great force fields there, as a lot of the first Zerglings are going to fall. The Cybernetics core does get picked off, but hey, Pig, you don't need a Cyber core to build 1,000,000 Zealots.
No, you do not. With charge +1 about to kick in, Templar Archives has done all those Zealots. They suddenly get their running shoes and they are ready to fight. That is such a big Protoss army, and there's nothing to deal with that many Zealots. A good force field traps 3 of the Ravagers up against it. And I mean, the chase is on. You just cannot fight that with Zerglings. Even without the +1 done, the Zealots are so good against Zerglings.
Yep, in these numbers, Zealots indeed don't even need +1. Now, EnDerr is going to rebuild 11 Roaches, and maybe if all the Roaches and the Queen show up at the same place, and I want to say in a couple of the Ravagers, but all the Ravagers went down, and that's just pretty devastating. 8 Ravagers have gone down. Other than the buildings and the probes, Astrea has lost a single Adept so far in this game. Could be a massive Zergling run by right now, as one High Templar does get picked off, but the other one is going to keep the wall safe for now. And look at this Protoss army, Pig, and I don't think there is any stopping it.
He's trying a sentry drop to get some force fields behind that army, making sure he can get on top of it. Astrea does lose his
Prism.
Warp Prism for that. EnDerr says, oi, that's a bit cheeky, mate. But the Spine Crawlers, will they get time to finish? Drones pull in it, but get Zealot and Archon. Oh, dude, Zealot Archons love fighting against drones. That is their dream.
Yep. And obviously the Archons helped out against the remaining Zerglings as well. The last few Roaches simply are not going to cut it. I mean, the Prism loss was pretty expensive because there were 4 units inside of the Warp Prism as well. But that's still not going to change the outcome of this battle. GG gets called and Astrea gets a very convincing